No, today I realized something that is missing. The time board is missing.
I never realized the time board is missing. I only realized why the two of us don't have nuggets. I feel it's an unfair treatment to the employees. Why the two of us don't have nuggets? No, there's always this thing called a Grab when someone can remotely order Grab and then it can arrive here.
Welcome back to the NOTG podcast for today, and today we are going to cover New Launches 101. So what are some of the things that we'll be covering today, George?
When we say we, it's just you and me.
Yes, today we are taking over the episode. The boss is not around. We're going to have some fun.
Today is the 13th of May, and I think when we talk about 13th of May, there's a few key important news that we want to address. So one of the things that I think a lot of people have been anticipating is the launch of the resale portals by HDB that allows buyers and sellers to do their own transactions on their own. I think maybe to some is kind of caught by surprise, but I think it's already something that's practiced in the market when sellers they just simply list their listing on Carousel. And then, they are just able to sell. Some of them even, I see them listing on Facebook, they're able to find buyers. But I think what HDB wants to do is to provide a more seamless information and more transparent information. So I think what this portal does is that, for example, your floor plan will automatically be updated. And then even things like your pricing at a certain price that you list. For example, if let's say you're having this 4-room near the core central area and you're listing at, say, $1 million, how does it fare against the recent transaction? Are you like abnormally low, or are you priced at a sky high price? And I think what HDB wants to do is to kind of have some governance in the marketplace so that it's a fair environment to both buyers and sellers. Yeah, and some of the key features is that for any sellers to list their property on the portal, you would need to already register your intent to sell, which is the very first step that all sellers will need to do in order to sell your property. And now, of course, for buyers, they will need to have the HFE done, which is also part of the intent to buy procedure, in order to schedule a viewing.
So I think one of the plus points will be with the portal, of course, sellers who are listed, that they have met the MOP ready, They are ready to issue an option to purchase because you can schedule a viewing. Same thing for the buyer. So I think basically the viewing will be more qualified. I think that is one of the plus points.
Yep.
The other thing will be, as seller, when you're listing a property, whichever price you're listed at, if you are listing 10% above or 10% below recent transacted prices, there will be a prompt to you. So I think that potentially can also help streamline, manage some expectations of, owner's pricing. I think if you're looking for a one-stop portal, I think that's that the government is HDB trying to streamline to make selling and buying much easier to take away some of the pitfalls that might already happened, right? And I think do you think that sellers in the future should still list with property agents for their HDB?
Okay, so I think this is the much talk about topic because a lot of maybe consumers, they might not know the roles or what are the kind of scopes that an agent does. So of course, sellers and buyers, they can definitely transact everything on their own. But I think where the agent comes in is also to kind of, for example, if let's say today you're just purely selling a property, I think you can definitely do so just on the portal itself. But if let's say you're doing a concurrent activity where you're selling and then buying at the same time, I think there are a lot of blind spots that maybe some of the consumers or maybe some even agents, they might not know. Some blind spots, for example, in terms of the extension, how does it translate into your transition to the next place? Doing so, will you incur things like bridging loan, additional costs that you could potentially avoid? Or, could you say avoid the logistical stress where you don't need to move twice and then yet you can move to the next place concurrently? Not just pertaining to the timeline of your sale, but also pertaining to the timeline of the buyer that's buying your HDB and also the timeline of the seller that's selling your property when you are buying over from them. So when we talk about transactions like this, minimally it is 2 timelines, but sometimes it can go to 3 or even 4 timelines that you're going to manage in order to avoid pitfalls, blind spots. I think that's where agents comes in.
So in summary wise, let's say for example, there's a seller who is just doing like selling and buying concurrently. So 4 main things to take care of, right? Just like we mentioned, like one is our cash flow management. After you sell, how does the funds flow to the next house? Maybe sometimes bridging loan facility is required to manage the timeline. Logistically, how do you ensure like something like a more convenient one-time move when you're selling and buying? If you are actually switching your property, let's say to like a private property, what are some key timelines to note such that you don't have to incur things like additional buyer stamp duty or have a reduction in terms of your mortgage loan to value? And I think like usually sometimes you will know like when the project is not being managed well, then there will be some spillover effect, especially like one party rolls over to the next party when the timeline doesn't match. So I think like that's where the expertise of somebody that's professional might be helpful. Of course, I think there are some houses that that require a little bit more attention with regards to maybe the layout is a little bit more creative, or like in terms of like older houses, like generally probably properties that are, I would say like not on like the A tier sought after list, then maybe like a stronger marketing campaign can help you to find the right buyer as well. So I think like if this is a very simple, straightforward kind of product, then you just want a matching element, then definitely I think like the portal can be useful also.
Yeah. So I think of course when we read briefly on the news, I think what it says is that buyer would need to have HFE letter in order to schedule viewings with sellers. So I think that's good because you are matching ready buyers, ready sellers together. But sometimes I think buying a house is not just that. Sometimes buyers will need to view a few rounds first. In order to kind of get their homework done, cross out their wants and don't wants. So maybe this portal might not be able to facilitate that. But I think, in essence of having matching serious sellers and serious buyer, this is perhaps what, the portal is trying to achieve.
I think like in summary wise, it will definitely be good for consumers, right? The portal will elevate the professionalism and expertise of the real estate professionals who are handling like the HDB market. Because number one, if the agent is just purely doing like a coordination work, right? They will be replaced by the system. But if there is added value in terms of, portfolio expertise, in terms of upgrading, in terms of like timeline, proper project planning, how do you elevate and bring up angles of the property? So this will have to elevate the entire skill set to stay relevant. So I think it's a win-win for consumers.
Yeah, so that will be the brief context of the latest real estate news pertaining to HDBs. But right now, let's dive deep into our new launch 101.
So I think a few things that we'll be covering today. Number one, of course, how has new launches been performing this year? We have a couple of launches that has happened. Are there any highly anticipated launches that we can look forward to? What are some of the pros of actually buying a new launches? What are some of the cons of buying a new launch? And I think like, because when you're buying a new launch, actually there are a lot of things that you should be paying attention to. Because most of the time when I buy a new launch, it's pretty simple. Recently, my client just commented this. It was very interesting.
Okay.
When we invested in this new launch about like 3.5 years ago, he didn't go down to a show flat. I was just at his house and then I showed him the virtual tour of the show flat, and then we bought and invested. And last week I was just there and then we sold the house. The house hasn't been completed yet. So wow, when I buy the house, I haven't seen it. Now I sold the house, I also haven't seen it. But like we helped him to achieve $500,000 in terms of profit, like from that transaction. And so it's important to know that when you're buying a new launch, there are a lot of things that you're trying to use your visualization from all the floor plan, site plan and all that. What are the things to look out for? Because if you do not end up picking the right property, when it comes to the resale market, everything becomes very transparent and apparent because your buyers are actually looking at the physical actual product. How is the layout going to look like? How is the view going to look like? Is there something that is covering you? So these are the things and pitfalls that we'll be covering today. And shout out, 7th July, what is happening, George?
So on the 7th of July, PLB is going to have a new launch convention. This is with collaboration with Sidley, and this will be happening at Suntec City Convention Center. So there's going to be a one-stop very detailed expo with I think about 40 over developers, 25 over speakers. And so I think what we want to achieve is to basically be very transparent in terms of all the new launches, what are the frameworks, what are the kind of different analyses that you can adopt in order to pick the right new launch that caters to your needs as well as your seasons of life. And so this will be happening on a single day. Early bird tickets will be at $7. So that's going to be very attractive. $7, you get a glance of everything just at one single location.
So I think what I'm trying to do is to bring you to reduce the opportunity cost and the time spent going to the different show flats. We bring all like the show flats to you in one single expo. So whether today you are buying for own use or whether you are an investor, right? We help you to identify what is the most suitable kind of new launch that you can consider for your seasons of life.
So of course, leading up to that, there will be also a series of webinars that you can attend to, because what is going to happen on the day of the new launch convention itself is that if you have already kind of done all your homework and then you just want to go down, have a listen, have a better understanding, and let's say on that day itself you are ready to commit, the purchase can also be done on the spot. So all these will be facilitated as well.
All right, awesome.
Is that the right shout out? All right, so let's dive deep into today's NOTG series, where we'll be talking about the new launch 101. So I think what we want to do today is also to touch a little bit more in terms of the kind of things to look out for, because naturally when you step into a show flat, perhaps 9 out of 10 or maybe 10 out of 10 times when you step in the show flat, there will always be good things to talk about a specific project. But I think what we want to do is to come in from a very neutral perspective, where some of the new launches, they have pros and cons, and what are the kind of things to look out for. And I think sometimes like what we have always been mentioning, Yu Rong also have been mentioning, sometimes the project can perform very well, but if you pick the wrong units in the right project, you might not be performing as well as your peers.
So for the upcoming launches in 2024, of course, like these two pages are the entire full list. I think it's similar to like 2023, right? The full list was 47, and eventually it went up to the end conclusion was 20 over projects were launched instead of the full 47. And the reason why is it so is because actually every developer is given like a 5 years time frame to sell off all their properties before they get hit by the additional buyer stamp duty. So what happens is, if you realize that if you look at this list, anything that you see that is freehold, it means that it has come from like an en bloc. Yep. And you can see the number of units. Usually, if it's a freehold en bloc kind of projects, they are usually 100 units and below. And so if you have 5 years to sell out, you have this timeline, right? Technically speaking, the developers can pick and choose when is the most appropriate time for them to sell. Sometimes developers do decide that they want to re-strategize and relaunch at the different timing. So, for example, when in 2023, when additional buyer stamp duty for 60% foreigners kicked in, where if you have a project that you are not so 100% targeted for just locals only, then you might want to relaunch it at a different time that is more appropriate. So of course, 99 years are generally those that are from government land sales. And if let's say the number of units is 300 units and above, then most of the time after they've gotten that land within 1.5 years, 1 year to 1.5 years, likely they will want to kickstart their launches so that they have the maximum timeline to actually sell off all their units.
So I think when we take a look at new launches, definitely most of the common questions that a lot of buyers will be asking is, hey, the new launches is already priced at a crazy price. Should I still enter? And then does it still make sense to enter? So I think last year, average, I think in terms of the new launches for 99 years, they are hovering at about 2000, 2001 PSF.
For the OCR area.
Correct, OCR area. And then of course for the CCR area, freehold, Watton House have already hit 3005 PSF, and they still perform pretty well. I think we want to also address that question, because I think in this year, 2024, leading towards 2025, what do you think is the average PSF?
Okay, I think number one, we need to know that harmonization has taken place. Right.
But I think not all the launches.
Yeah. Okay. So for briefly wise, of course, Lentor mentioned that was launched earlier part of the year. This was the first project that falls under the harmonization ruling. In summary, is before harmonization, quick one is different government bodies, they use different ways to measure what is the square footage size of the unit. So some measure from the center of the wall, some on the edge of the wall, some from the start of the wall. And of course, in summary wise, harmonization means that all government authorities will use the same formula to decide how they do the measurement. The short answer is that like we know that things like aircon ledges will now no longer be considered as part of the strata unit. That's number one.
Void space.
Floor space will reduce. Okay, we cannot include any more void space. So it's very likely that developers will no longer launch all the high ceiling on your penthouse unit where you have like a sort of like a void space.
You have to pay for it.
Space to get the additional ceiling height in the living dining area. Even curtain glass facade, which has been pretty popular for some of the, like to make some of the projects more iconic, to have the entire glass facade, because they actually can get the additional 10 to 15 cm worth of additional premium. So this will likely be gone. Yeah. So these are some of the things that we can, what will happen, like to the new launch segment after the harmonization portion take place. And so what it means is that same thing. If developers are still going to sell like a similar unit, but with a smaller floor space, then of course the per square feet is going to be slightly higher. Where as compared to the aircon ledge kind of era. So as we can see, like for example, Lentor mentioned average pricing about $2,200 per square feet, as compared to the previous launches that is closer to, the $2,100 per square after accounting for the aircon ledge kind of difference. But however, the quantum pricing is something that is still more important to look out for. Because for example, harmonization could actually lead to developers creating even more efficient kind of layouts. So for example, Lentor mentioned has very efficient layouts. You can actually have like a smaller size. However, it seems like the usable space becomes bigger.
What's the average 2 bed 2 bath size for Lentor mention?
2 bed 2 bath size for Lentor mention. It was, I think, 600.
600 square feet.
I can't remember.
I think that is quite unachievable last time, because when we talk about 2 bed 2 bath for most of the units, they are averaging at about 700 plus square feet. So naturally, the 700 plus square feet, I think in terms of quantum, is about the similar price quantum that we are seeing in new launches. Of course, moving forward towards the end of the year or towards 2025, I think majority of the units will experience a higher PSF. Naturally so, because of the harmonization.
So I think like in terms of like floor sizing, it has changed a lot over the years. So a lot of times one of the things of like when people say, okay, if I'm buying a new launch unit, I'm actually buying like a smaller size, right? Which is true when you are comparing based on like the actual square footage only. In terms of the actual usable space, I think like there are layouts that have transpired over time. So I think like from the very, very olden days, we have things like number one, no balcony. And however, sometimes we see like maybe the walkways are a bit longer, the bedrooms might not have like that full square kind of layout. There are space that is dedicated to give you a huge open yard. And sometimes buyers nowadays, then they ask, hey, how come nowadays got no yard? And of course, because of course land price got more expensive, we need to start taking out spaces that are not so important, especially with technology improvement, right? So right now we have dryer, and as more people adopt the use of dryer, you do not require such an open yard to, like really air dry your clothes. So I think like it is okay to have some of these spaces being removed. Then after that, we went on to the bay window era.
Correct. So bay window eras I would say it's a love-hate kind of relationship. So bay window eras, we have some buyers that love bay window. They like to just lounge by the bay window. Some is, to them a no-no. So of course, there are still several ways that you can, make very good use of the bay window in order to say that, okay, I can fully utilize the area. So the big balcony, the big aircon ledges, the bay windows, all these will not be too evident in the newer launches that we are going to see.
Actually, last time when I first started in real estate 11 years ago, I thought like, hey, bay window is like, the bay window was incentivized such that you can create more interesting architecture. And then how the developers create to maximize this, right? Okay, number one, why do we have planters? Is to, make the entire building more green. Bay window is to make the entire architecture more interesting. However, you realize that in order to maximize, because there's some incentive to build bay windows and planters at that kind of era, right? You realize that every room, every space that you can squeeze in a planter and bay window, you have it even in the bathrooms.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But after that, at first, when I first started, I was like, oh, okay, the bay window seems like to not be a very space efficient kind of usage.
Okay.
But over time, I grew to like bay windows when they are of the right amount and at the right places. So even though, for example, in the bedroom, right, I might not be able to step on the bay window. However, it still gives me the additional expansion of space. So I think it still offers some plus point, right? And if I know how to use the right platform to extend from the bay window, I can actually start my mattress starting from the bay window itself, and hence I can actually have more floor space on the other side of this. So there are like some of these kind of like things that we can work around with this kind of floor plan.
I understand. I would say bay windows are okay if it is not too high. If it's
not
too high,
aggressive lah. Oh, not too high lah. Okay,
not too high. If it's too high, then your platform also have to be higher.
Yeah. I've seen before bay window that is like at like my chest level. So this will be something that can be used as a decorative display.
Sure. Okay, let's move on. Onwards from the bay window. So so I think to answer the question, why are there still buyers out there looking for new launches? So I think probably I'll just start by sharing that I think there are definitely some buyers that have a very specific requirements that they still want to have, for example, the TOP effect. That's number one. And they want to be able to, say, buy into something new. Because to some of the buyers, the impression of driving back home or, the whole entire uplifting of new facilities matters to them a lot. Some of them is also because the progressive payment works towards their favor. And then I think these are some of the reasons that buyers want to buy into a new launch.
Okay, so I think like progressive payment, like I mentioned, I think there is two tier of effects lah. Number one, for people who are buying mainly full cash or predominantly not using much loan, you are able to stagger your payments over like a 3 to 4 year period. So that really helps in terms of like managing the cash flow to invest in a new property. So for example, $1 million, instead of paying it upfront within 3 months, such that you take over the property, now you can stagger it all the way 3 to 4 years. If you are not using full cash payment and you are taking a loan, and that actually, because progressive payment is in 8 different stages, what it means is that like you are paying lesser interest at each stage. And so if you are seeing that interest rate now is high and potentially it will come down in 2 to 3 years, you are trying to defray the interest rate cost when it is at its highest peak. So that is one plus point of progressive payment. You mentioned about, usually modern buildings will have more interesting architecture. We can always renovate like an old house interior. But you can never change the facade, how it looks like. You can never change the modernness of like the facilities. And I think nowadays there are a lot more emphasis on the facilities that you can get from like let's say a bigger kind of new launch. I think like it's something that you can encourage more like common, I would say like commonplace kind of like usage. So that is one plus point. But I think from like a new launch, there is definitely other plus point also. Number one, if you are looking, I think one of the major plus point for me is that like in the new launch phase is where I can have the highest chance to pick the kind of layout facing floor level that I want, as compared when it comes to resale market. So if let's say my Q ticket is relatively good, right? I can have a pick of like 200 units. Versus when it comes to resale market, maybe I can at a point of time choose maybe 5 to 10 units.
Whatever is available in the market.
So I think that is one major plus point. Second thing is, of course, if you want something that is like hassle-free, you want something that is new because it comes with like a 1 year warranty period after you collect your keys, and developers are supposed to give you something that is of a good, functional, usable condition. So that is one plus point. Something that has no history, because sometimes buyers will think, hey, actually who stayed here before? Like especially the older houses, like is there any financial issues?
Are there funny stories?
etc. Any funny stories? So you will know that there is no history. Okay, so maybe you can explain a little bit on the TOP effect that you mentioned.
So I think when we talk about the TOP effect, firstly, the inherent characteristics of the project must be able to achieve a certain criteria. So for example, we talk about TOP effect. What is TOP effect is that when a project reaches its TOP, it could be 3 or 4 years later after the purchase, then the price starts to move. Naturally, when we talk about, hey, I'm entering at 2004 PSF, can it potentially hit, say, 3000 PSF? That will always be the question for all new launches buyer. Just like back then when, launches was at like 1005, 1008 PSF, there will always be this question. Of course, the big picture to look at it is, are there new government land sale that will be launched in the market to ensure that the next government land sale will hit a new peak price? And of course, when a new peak price has already been hit, we also know that the price has been absorbed. And naturally, with economic factors, the sellers will then be able to command, say from entering at 2004 PSF, say, they exit at say about 2008 PSF. Why is that this effect is also because there are more transactions volume. So this is why when we talk about some of the new launches, the volume effect matters a lot in terms of buying into a new launch. And then when some of the sellers wants to exit, the number of transactions will also allow the price to hit its peak. And then that is the point of time that, you can potentially exit by leveraging on the TOP effect. Of course, TOP effect wouldn't say it works 100%. You need to fulfill certain criteria such as the right facing, the right stacks, and then of course the right project, along with the other attributes that we're going to be talking about.
So I think essentially what George is saying that for example, when you buy a new launch, let's say from a homeowner or investor standpoint, is that everybody start off from ground zero, the same.
Yep.
There is no need to have additional specific communication because everybody will have sort of a similar minimum price expectation to achieve. Right, maybe that is $250, $300 on top of their purchase pricing. And also everybody getting at a similar pricing. So yeah, there's no concern that, okay, maybe today I'm buying a resale property. I'm likely paying higher than 99% of the rest of the neighbors in the entire history of the project. And what if there is a change of events, there is an economic crisis? Will the other owners be able to let go their property at a lower entry price than where I enter in terms of my per square feet? And still they can actually achieve good profits. Then there is that kind of risk factor over there.
Yep.
So I guess number one, I think in order to achieve a good profit, for example, from a new launch perspective, of course, you need to choose and have the right kind of factors.
Yep.
Okay. I think the other thing for having what's the other thing that you think is good for having buying a new launch?
I think we talk about the progressive payment. Do you want to dive a little bit deeper in terms of the progressive payment? Because I think that is a good thing to dive a little closer. So when we talk about progressive payment, let's say today you have a budget of about $2 million and then you're kind of sitting on the fence, hey, should I be going for a new launch or should I be going for a resale? We take a look at the numbers perspective first, because if you take a look at the purchase price of $2 million, progressive payment milestone, if let's say you're going to take a full 75% loan. Okay, so the very first caveat that you need to know is when you're buying a new launch and if you're taking a loan, it will have to be on a floating rate. Floating rate right now is 3 months SORA is averaging at about 3.6%, plus whatever spread that the bank is giving you.
0.5?
So yeah, the spread could be 0.5. So averaging, your interest rate will naturally be slightly higher at about 4+%. But because you are on a progressive payment, which also means that when the developer calls for the next milestone payment, it's going to be a small amount. Maybe the first year, it could just be at about $500 over. So that could be what you're seeing. So sometimes we've seen some buyers, they ask very specific question. When will the foundation be ready or when will the developer start to call for the first payment? So for example, some of the very big projects such as Continuum, what we understood is that the developer will start to call for the very first payment only 1 year later. So that could work very well for someone that is, they have the ability to down pay, budget up to 2 million, but they can take that 1 year to slowly build up their CPF or their savings to ensure that once they call for the payment, they can have sufficient amount to pay. So back to this example, $2 million. If you take a look at the screen, this is based on how many years? 25 or 30 years?
30 years.
Okay, so based on 30 years loan tenure, and then based on the current floating rates, progressive payment for the first 6 months, this is when they start to call for the foundation payment. Averaging is about $477, and after 1 year, blah, blah, blah. And then it will just slowly add up until it reaches its maximum, which is at CSE. So CSE is usually 1 year after TOP, 1 year after you collect the keys. So these will be the figures that you'll be looking at, which is very manageable in terms of the monthly mortgage. But if you take a look at ballpark, what is the cumulative interest? Because some buyers will then want to know what is the cumulative interest that they
during
incur,
that 3 to 4 years?
Correct, during the 3 to 4 years, so that they can really more accurately calculate their ROI. So I'm going to just punch in some numbers in my own calculator. The cumulative interest over 4 years, let's say after 4 years, I think 4 years is more or less the average time for CSC. So the cumulative interest for a new launch over 4 years, because it is progressive in nature, is about $140 over $1,000 based on 2 million, 75% LTV. Now, if you put that into a resale market, naturally resale markets, the interest you can buy and you can secure at a fixed rates, let's assume at 3% over 30 years. So your interest accumulated over 4 years will then be at about 170 over 1,000. So I would say the delta will be at about 30,000 between a new launch as well as a resale. Yeah, of course, this is not yet factoring into your MCST fees as well as your property tax that you'll be incurring.
So I think from an investor standpoint, the strategy for investing in a new launch is number one. Of course, there are a lot of people that want to stay in a new home.
Yeah.
But they do not have the time luxury to wait. So if you are able to park your funds in the right home, we are just basically waiting on behalf of the eventual buyer, such that, like we can let go to this buyer at the point of TOP. They can own something that is brand new with defect liability warranty period from developer, and they don't have to wait. So I think at the same time, we make a margin. I think that's quite a win-win from an investor standpoint.
Yep.
I think one of the other plus point of like why homeowners would like to consider a new launch is because, number one, it's a leasehold 99 years. And for somebody who is owner occupying like the place, they might think that, okay, I might want to stay in the place for 10 years to 15 years. I have to have my 2 kids finish the primary school, etc. So they want to ensure that when they start to let go of this property eventually, it's still going to be young and attractive to the next buyer. Instead of maybe, for example, they buy something that is relatively new, 15 years, 10 years at the moment. They stay for another 10, 15 years. By the time they want to let go, maybe the remaining lease is probably 70 years left, and they have this concern that maybe like the price might come down and it will really reduce the buying pool.
Yep. So of course, some of the other benefits in terms of new launches is that you get the very first mover advantage. So that's one. Secondly is, I think in terms of location, just now what Yu Rong mentioned is that when you are going for, say, a specific area, and you want to have certain amenities, but because maybe the surrounding areas are all, the old condos, and then naturally when you talk about older condos, the supply in the resale market will usually be lower, because maybe some of the old condos, some of the homeowners that are staying down there, they are just, perhaps just buy into it and then they just want to stay there and then retire. So the supply is also very limited. And then with some of the new plots that are being launched, and then in terms of the URA master plan, some of the plot ratio are also high. And with a higher plot ratio, sometimes certain project or certain stacks, they can get a pretty good view. And that could be something that is not available in some of the resale market, especially with other factors such as, the remaining lease. When they buy into it, they want to know their exit strategy, and maybe some of the projects nearby are old, and maybe the balance lease is like 70 plus. They intend to stay there for 10 years. At the 60 years mark, they will be thinking, hey, will I still be able to sell? But this problem, of course, will not happen to the new launch project.
Yeah. Okay, now let's talk about the cons of actually owning a new launch. So we have to be neutral and look at like both sides of the coins. So what are the major cons that you see from buying into like a new launch property?
Okay, I would say buying into a new launch property sometimes, okay, maybe I can say that is 99% hard work, but 1% down to luck. Because you could have done all your homework, you have maybe shortlisted like 20 different units, you identified the kind of stacks, 20 different units. But come the balloting day, we're going to run you through the process of how a new launch works. If let's say today you're new, you could get a very, bad or lousy ballot number that by the time you want to go for it, you don't have the right stack that you can go for. So there could be missed opportunity in terms of the new launches that you are going for. Of course, if you don't have the luxury of time, then you also can't be able to say you move in immediately. The downside, of course, is that you can't immediately rent it out if let's say you're coming from an investor perspective, because if you buy a new launch, obviously you have to wait for 3 or 4 years. During that period, you could be subjected to whatever government policies that could be rolled out, and it could affect your plans as well.
So I think if I were to just summarize what you mentioned, number one is if your queue ticket is not good, right? So generally when you're buying a new launch, there is like 2 different phases. First phase is when it first launches, then they call it the preview stage. So usually it is about 1.5 weeks to 2 weeks. You can visit the show flat, but you cannot buy any units. So this is called the preview phase. You can submit an expression of interest with a blank check to participate on like the balloting day, which is one of the days that is dedicated by the developer. So let's say, for example, there are 500 people who submitted this expression of interest. Then they will do an e-balloting to determine the sequence of who come first to be able to choose the unit to be fair. Right? So that's number one. So hence, if let's say the queue number is not so good, maybe those that you have identified to be what you want might be gone. So that's why it's attributed to luck, right? Okay.
Correct.
I think when buying a new launch, the strategy is very, very important because number one, you do not know the price of the units. During the entire preview phase, you only know the starting price for each bedroom type, right? Then what happens? When
you visit a new launch, you will not know the price. You will have an estimation in terms of the price. So usually there will be this price metrics where, for this respective size, if let's say it is launching at 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006 PSF, what will likely be the price range so that you don't get caught, by surprise when the price launch on the very day of the balloting of the unit. So when you put in expression of interest and then they will start to ballot for your number, if let's say there are 300 units and then there are 500 checks collected, and then hopefully you're belonging to the first 5 or 10 percentile, then you can have a high chance of selecting the right units.
5 to 10 percentile actually is if you know how to choose the right units, right? Then that's very good.
Very good. Yeah, that would be very, very good. Come to the time when you are queuing up, depending on where is the launch location. Sometimes the launch location can be all congregated into one area where you can see all the various agencies, interests, as well as which units are being sold. Sometimes it will be scattered to the various agencies' location. So when you're queuing up, let's say you already have 20, and let's say you are queue number 100, okay, out of 500, and you feel that, okay, I have a very good chance of selecting the right units. And then as you're queuing up, maybe the 20 units choices that you have, slowly one by one are already taken up, because naturally when you're going for say a 2-bed 2-bath, I would say if you have the budget, most of the time you want to go for something that's high floor, unblocked view and stuff like that. And it is very natural for other buyers to think the same way as well. So which is why we will always recommend at least 15 or 20 different options, so that as you're queuing up, when the units get selected, you will know that you have already a backup plan, and all these are the homeworks that are essential. If you go in unprepared and you're not familiar with this option, you might be swayed due to a FOMO effect, and then that could be very dangerous in resulting you buying into the wrong unit.
And of course, I think like the entire environment is to set up to maximize the number of units that can be sold by the developers.
1010 sold! Congratulations! So this will be the kind of environment. Thereafter, as you're queuing up, 1001 sold! Congratulations! That will be the exact kind of environment. And to be honest, is to create this kind of effect. And then, if let's say come to your turn and then you are down to like your last 5 choices, maybe run through what will happen if let's say you are at that spot and then you say, I want to think.
Okay. Yeah. So usually there's what they call like the thinking box. Right, so
like a naughty corner.
When it reaches your turn and you are unable to, let them know what unit you want to go for, probably in like a 1 minute kind of time frame, then they will sort of like put you on hold. And the people behind you can actually have the choice and continue to select the units that they want to until any time when I'm ready again, I can continue to join back into the queue.
Yeah.
So I think like number one, the biggest blind spot of buying a new launch, especially in the preview phase, is that like the pricing is blind to you. Because in the morning, a lot of clients will ask, oh, so when will I know the price? Actually, you won't know the price. Even at the morning of the booking day, you still don't know the price. You only know the starting price. But that's where it's important to work with somebody who is very experienced in the new launch segment. Of course, we understand that number one, developers will price the same unit type of different facing at a huge price premium. So for example, maybe the least premium stack to the most premium stack, it could be like a 10% price difference. Right. So what's important, of course, like floor level, if let's say this is a tall building above 30th story, right, the price spread from the lower floors until the higher floor can be also quite substantial. Maybe after it crosses level 15, it can be 20k per floor kind of loading, etc. So what happens is that we will do a lot of pricing analysis homework. So we sort of like try to predict from developers how they will actually do their pricing structure, which is the most premium to the least premium units. And so we are trying to determine overall which are the most value stack. If let's say it's coming from investment standpoint, then the numbers are very, very important. If it's for own stay, then we will take into account some of the personal preferences of like what you want to see. But we want to ensure that it is of like good value still. So hence it's always important to determine, number one, what is a walk-away price. If I see a certain per square feet, then it's time to walk away so that we do not fall into the FOMO, like, you know, like the
category.
Yeah, correct. And then we end up buying into a unit where that's why you see that like usually after every launch, maybe there are like 5% of the
bounce out units,
or like 1 to 2% of people that might drop out because they might have decided in a rush and realize that, hey, I think like I overpaid for it. I think like last 2 months after like one of the project launches, then they call into the PLB hotline. And then like they say, okay, I need advice to see whether did I make the right choice for this project. Is it actually a good choice? Is this unit the right choice or not? Then I will say that it will be better if you do all this way beforehand. Because once you have committed to a unit, you put 5%. And if you do not want to go through, there will be a forfeiture. And the forfeiture is you can only take back 75% of your 5% down payment, and you should lose 25% of it. That will be minimally $10,000 to $20,000. Right? So if you just bring forward and do the due diligence right from the start, I mean, $10,000 to $20,000 is not say like it's not life-changing money, but it's still a good portion amount.
You can go holiday.
Right. So do the due diligence at the start so that you avoid, you know, like losing this kind of like 5-figure kind of mistakes.
Especially when you're in the thinking corner, I think it's good to remain very level-headed. If you're going there by yourself, or if you have, you know, a realtor that is assisting you, to know that whether the information that's being shared with you are something that is very fluff, or is it something that is on a right comparison basis? Because today, if you were to show some comparison, I think there is always two spectrums. One is I can show you something that is very relevant to the unit that we are seeing in terms of the price comparison, in terms of layout, in terms of the floor plan, in terms of the facing. Whereas on the other spectrum, it could be something that is very skewed. That means it could be something that is you know, a 15 years old project where the layout are largely and vastly different. And then that kind of comparison will of course be skewed to sway you towards into buying something that, you know, you will end up having a remorse. So I think attention to detail is very important when you are trying to buy a new launch. So a lot of things, just by looking at the floor plan or like the site plan or the show model, you might not notice until you collect the keys. For example, for example, in your floor level, where is actually the bin chute located? Sometimes you are surprised and you collect it. I realize that the common floor level bin chute is just right beside. You open out your door, it's just right beside.
Yeah, so this is one of the things. Sometimes people collect their keys and realize that they open their windows. Actually, it's a retaining wall that blocks the entire view. Or I'm seeing into the multi-story car park. Or you are looking directly into the bin center.
Right.
And these are some of the things that sometimes you don't pay attention to when noticing where are all these services being located, and you only get caught by surprise because new launch, that's how, you know, like it gets sold. Because some of the information might not be, you know, like openly displayed such that, like you get the full information. But once you collect the keys as a resale buyer, they will notice, they open the window, they see exactly what it is.
Because I think sometimes when you are at the show flats, I think it's not an obligation to share, certain information. But of course, I think what we want to do is to help you to identify. For example, a very good point is, things like your rubbish chute. We had cases when our clients collected their keys. Of course, they didn't buy through us. Then they realized that, hey, this whole block, although it's 5 stories, but I think 5 stories that there are maybe about 40 units. There's only one lift. And they were shocked. Perhaps that one lift, right, I believe is of course built according to BCA guidelines as well as requirements. But some buyers, will have this kind of concern because when the sellers bought it during launch, they were not aware of this information. And then it became very apparent when buyers visited a unit and then they constantly give this feedback. Hey, what if, this lift break down and then I'm staying at level 4, and would it have a lot of waiting time in the event, let's say, there's scheduled maintenance and stuff like that. So that will of course be one. The other one is you also need to look at the surrounding plots around your development. For example, if let's say your project is maybe only until level 5, it could be on a plot ratio of 1.4. And then the neighboring projects, you also need to see what is the plot right beside. Is it a residential? Is it education? Is it a place of worship? How high are these buildings? Will your views be blocked? Because when you go to the show flat, at the perimeter of the project, they will usually just put trees and stuff like that, and then it will just be greens. So sometimes buyers might not pay attention to what is surrounding the projects, and then would it cause an issue in terms of selling in future?
So basically, it's important if let's say you are buying units that are facing outwards to know, number one, if it's an empty land, don't be too happy. You want to know the empty land, what is going to be built, how high is going to be built. And so at least you are able to own units that can clear the view because the demand and the pricing you're going to get when it comes to, okay, you can clear the entire roof versus that you are still facing the other development, depending on what you are seeing, is very, very crucial. And also like, which part of the building are you actually seeing? Are you seeing like the front of the building, which usually looks nice? Or are you seeing the service area, the back of the unit? So that I think will differ a lot in terms of like your exit audience. And I think sometimes it's also important to not underestimate the facing, what is the kind of like noise level that you are able to expect, right? So sometimes when I say, I'm facing an expressway, you want to know that number one, when you are facing an expressway, you need to roughly know what is the sound level going to be like. Okay, and whether it will heavily impact your potential exit audience. So sometimes, if we need to consider expressway facing units, I will bring my clients to the closest residential development that we can go up to.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's a HDB. Right, and then we go up to a level and I say, you sure? You okay? You want to buy this facing? This will be the noise and how it looks. So at least you have a better sense.
Yeah. And I think some buyers do not mind that because one very important question that you need to ask yourself is when I'm buying to this project, let's say I'm buying to a expressway facing unit, they are perhaps someone that is not too sensitive to noise and they feel that, okay, I'm going to stay here for long term. I'm not going to sell somewhere in the near term. And I know that maybe my sale will not be as fast as my counterparts. It might take slightly longer. And if let's say you're kind of prepared for it, knowing that when you enter into this unit, you are enjoying a significant price disparity compared to others, say, unblocked quiet facing units, I think that will be okay. Ultimately, it will naturally still affect you in terms of the resale market. But once this project hits its resale market, and then when other units start to transact higher, naturally you'll also be able to command higher, but of course with a slight discount, and you'll still be able to sell. Yeah,
so I think in our other episodes, we do cover that actually you can buy any unit and still be profitable. So what's most important is I can accept any cons to the house as long as the price is correct for me to accept those cons, because I need to pass on the discounted savings to my potential buyers. As long as I can see additional margin, then this can still yield as a good investment. However, we just need to understand that probably the time to exit will take a bit longer to find the right buyer that do not mind such things. So for example, expressway facing will be ideal for people who actually want unblocked view. And then they either have high tolerance of sound, or they usually don't even open the windows, because most of the time, with the windows closed, you actually do not hear much of the expressway noise anymore. Then so to them, these buyers will be specific that okay, it is actually good. I want to specifically look for expressway facing units because I want the view.
Some of them is, they want to buy into the expressway facing unit because they are buying with the intention to just rent it out. So to them, the numbers make sense because they are entering, say, at a lower price point. And of course, from investors' lens, is they are just looking in terms of the numbers. The lower entry price also means that it's easier for them to achieve a certain ROI that they want to. Yeah.
Of course, the most value purchase or the best investment will not be sort of like the cheapest unit. We want to find what is the value buy that, number one, we do not inherit a lot of inherent negative factors, that we will need a lot of marketing creativity to anchor and position to find the right buyer. And we also do not want to be overpaying for just marginal improvement in terms of features and benefits that will make it like overpriced in the resale market. So like a value purchase, limit the cons, enter the correct pricing. So that's the sort of like the safest route towards, like owning a new launch investment. Make it easy to exit as well as maximizing the potential margin that you can gain.
Yeah. So I think when we talk about that, sometimes it's important to take a look in terms of the pricing. For example, certain project center developers, they will have a price jump. Say, for example, let's say the entire development is 30 stories. So maybe from up to level 10 or 12, maybe the increment is say about $10 PSF for every level. And then from level 13 onwards, the price jump will then be implemented. So that price jump could be maybe at about $20 or $30 difference. And then from there, it increases onwards. Of course, the higher it goes, the higher the PSF and naturally the higher the price point. So these are, I think, the key important factors that you need to know. Whether do you want to really cross that price jump in order to enter at a much higher price point, and how would that translate into the resale market? Or do you want to be, the buyer that just buy into, say, a level 10, level 11? It's clear enough, but not excessively high price, but yet you have a clear view. And I think this will be kind of the confusion zone that a lot of buyers will be facing.
I think like paying attention to some details are important when you are analyzing like the floor plan or the project itself. So for example, nowadays we start to have more projects that have sheltered walkway to the project itself.
Yeah.
So it's important to know that, of course, it's always good to have like a shelter walkway, right? But you want to know whether the shelter walkway can actually help you to not get wet at all until your unit, or is it only until the project itself? Because some, when it ends at the side gate, maybe you are entering into the basement of the project and you can use the basement to get a unit without getting wet. Or there is some form of like a shelter from the side gate to the nearest block that is connected to all the other towers. But there are some that actually really just ends at the side gate, and you have that 10 meters of...
They need to dash. The 10 meters dash.
Yeah. So I think like these are the small little things. And of course, I think in terms of like a vantage point, I think it's very important. If let's say, for example, you are buying a unit that's internal facing, to understand, okay, what is the height of like the clubhouse?
Okay. Yeah.
What is so that you will know that, number one, if there is a gym, there's a clubhouse, there's a multi-story car park, you want to ensure that if you have a choice, probably it will be good to clear it. Instead of like, for example, you open your window, you realize that, you can see the people exercise at the gym, and the people who exercise at the gym can look at you. Or you can see like the headlights of the cars driving up the multi-story car park. So I think these are some of the key things to take note also.
Yeah. So of course, when you are buying from the show flats, all these will be the kind of different things that you might not pay attention to. And it will become very apparent. Some buyers even ask very specific question: is the block lift lobby air conditioned? Why this is important is because they do not want to be standing in a lobby where there's no aircon, and then they are waiting for their Grab or delivery to come. So I think these are factors that will create a certain appeal when it comes into the resale market. So even down to the car park signages, how clear are the car park signages? All this becomes very, very apparent in the resale market, but not during, at the point of time when you purchase a new launch.
In terms of the layout wise, for example, it's important to know that if generally wise, if not all your rooms and your living room, they are not facing the same direction, then you have to pay a little bit closer attention. So usually, if let's say you have one room that is on the back facing, then it's important to know and sort of like predict, right? Which part of the neighbor's unit are you facing? Because that will determine what you're going to see. Will it be blocked in terms of sunlight, natural lighting, and views? That's one thing. The next thing is also to note, right? Nowadays, usually developers will give you decent sized rooms. But how sometimes the inefficiency will come more in the living and dining space. And it's important to know that sometimes they compromise on the living and dining width to move the space to the bedroom size to make it sort of like more comfortable. So one of the things to a very quick hack is very simple. You look at the floor plan to see what is the width of the bedroom. And usually the width of the bedroom is about 2.4, 2.5 meters. And so the width of the living room, right, needs to be wider than the common bedrooms. If not, it will usually mean that you will be ending up in the living room width of about like 2.5 meters. Usually that is a little bit, I would say like tight, especially if you're buying like a 3-bedder, like a compact kind of like 3-bedroom. If you're buying like a 1-bedroom, okay, like still okay. Yeah. So I think like these are some of the key things. Not to have oversized balcony. I think a good balance between indoor versus outdoor space. I think I love outdoor space. Just that it will be very funny if let's say the outdoor space is like 30% of your internal space, right? So I think the right proportion is very important because in terms of like exit audience, that will be impacted as well.
Yeah. So always pay very close attention to the floor plan. Ask for the floor plan with the dimension because sometimes when you go to the show flat, only certain layouts are being displayed as part of the show flat. So for example, maybe the project have 5 different 3-bedroom configuration. And they could probably just show, the ideal or the best layout that maybe the crowd is going for. It could be, say, a 3-bedder with a study is belonging to a slightly bigger layout. But if let's say your budget allows you to just want to cap at the 3-bedder compact, then it's good to pay very close attention because there are certain variations. Maybe say, for example, some of the bathroom can tend to be a little bit small. And it depends on whether, you're someone that value this kind of perspective, and it's good to take a closer look in terms of the floor plans, in terms of the dimension, do some comparison to see, hey, whether will all these factors matters to me in terms of the resale ability.
And also I think like it is important that, for example, when looking at the floor plans, right, to not just look at what property type it is. So sometimes, like it is labeled as like a 3+ study or like a 2+ study. When it comes to resale market, your buyer might not treat this as like a study space. So for example, so that's how it look. If the space is an open study area that is, like part of your living area and it cannot be enclosed to actually fit in a single size bed, I wouldn't consider it as a study because your future audience will just think of it as, oh, this is like a 2-bedder or this is like a 3-bedroom. If the bedroom can only fit in a single bed and wardrobe, I would not consider it as a full bedroom. So it might be considered as like a half bedroom by your natural audience in the resale market. So a proper bedroom means that it can be of different size in terms of like 2 common rooms of different size. But if it can fit in at least a queen size bed and wardrobe, okay, this is my minimum criteria to classify as a bedroom. Because sometimes you have developments where 3 bedrooms, but you have one of the bedrooms can only put in a single bed.
Yeah.
Then do you angle as is it a 3-bedder or is it like becomes like a 2.5 when it comes to resale market? So we don't just look at what is the heading of the property type that's provided, but we think from how buyers will actually be looking at it in the resale market.
Functionality and usability. So I think other things to take note of is, for example, certain floor plan. You need to be able to know whether are those full height window or are those just a half height window, because it will again be very apparent when buyers are viewing different units, especially after TOP. There will be a lot of other units that will be on sale, and then your neighbors will then turn to become your competitor. So I think this will be the few things to take note of in terms of the things to look out for a new launch. So I think what we want to do is also to take a look in terms of what are some of the profiles of the new launch buyers, because I think it matters a lot when it comes to some of the profiles of new launch buyers. Naturally, when you talk about the profile of new launch buyers, I think it's it will create an effect when you want to sell. For example, if let's say some of the new launch buyers, majority of them are say like, foreigners, and let's say they're willing to pay the 60%, does it also means that when it comes to the TOP, will they sell or will they hold on to the property due to the fact that they're already entering, say, at this ABSD rate? So that, I think that's factor number one. Number two is also because if some of the new launch buyers are say retirees, or they have, a spare name and they want to buy maybe in full cash, they have the ability to hold out longer, and then it will also naturally translate into a slightly lower transaction volume.
So maybe we can look at a very quick one, 2024, all the new launches. How has it been performing?
Yeah.
So of course, first one, Arcadia at Boon King, sold about 29%, $2,400 per square feet. This in the Boon King area, freehold property. I think the performance is okay. Hill Haven, this is in the Hillview area, 99 years. They sold about 17% of the total units. We also have Lentor Mansion. So this is one of the best performer this year so far. They sold 75% of the 533 units on the first weekend of launch. Average per square feet, $2,100 to $2,400. Lentoria, which is in the same area of the Lentor area, sold 19%. So sometimes we have to ask ourselves, why did buyers prefer a certain project over the other when the location attributes are so similar with regards to both are near the MRT station, both have shelter walkway, both are within 1 kilometer of the very popular St. Nicholas School. But how come the market seems to, prefer, in both the percentage and in terms of number of units, they go for Lentor Mansion, right? So these are some of the key things. You only have sort of one shot to invest in a residential property at one go without incurring additional buyer stamp duty. So I think it's important where you know how to, place the money on what we call the lower risk and higher return kind of selection to maximize your choice. Lumina Grand EC, pretty well, 53% of units sold on launch weekend, $1,400 per square feet. Hill at One North, that is at the One North area. So they sold about 43 units, probably about 20%. This is on the average pricing of about close to $2,600, which is quite in line with the RCR kind of pricing. Of course, we also have Hillshore. This is actually in the Bukit Panjang area, freehold property, and they sold 3 units. Average pricing $2,600 per square feet. So I think overall wise, as prices reach a new benchmark, it is very important to know that number one, we cannot just blindly, if let's say you're investing in a new launch, to blindly choose a development to go for. We need to do some data analytics to ensure that number one, even you are buying for own stay, that at least this move is something that is safer. And we have some suitability in terms of your holding period, your risk profile, and your property cycle, your own internal property cycle. So that is one of the things. What are some of the key launches that you are excited about this year?
Wait, so before that, I want to dive a bit in terms of the your own sale and purchase cycle. So let's say today you are buying into a new launch, and then I think a lot of conception is that you can buy and then you sell it 3 years later. Why 3 years is also because that will be the end of the seller stamp duty. And a lot of buyers, they want to quickly turn the time around so that they can re-enter into the market again. 3 years, is that a very accurate depiction in terms of the timeline? Personally, I feel that if let's say you want to just buy and then sell at the 3rd year mark, usually at the 3rd year mark, it will still be categorized under the sub-sale category because most of the projects would not have reached its TOP status. And that also means that in terms of the price movement, maybe that isn't that strong. And then you might want to say, okay, do I want to factor in a slightly longer time to sell? Few key points or mindset to adopt is that mentally be prepared that you might have to hold on for slightly longer than the 3rd year mark, because at the sub-sale period, buyers can't really see anything. There isn't any show flat. Show flat would have already been demolished by then. Buyers can only go there, maybe on site, they can only just see the structure, but that is all. They can only rely on the floor plan. So just by selling on the floor plan, it can be a little bit more challenging and buyers might find it hard to visualize. So even if let's say you're marketing and then an offer comes in, it might not be at this highest potential exit price. And then actually you will say, okay, I want to wait a while longer. The second mindset to adopt is when you wait a while longer, it could be approaching towards the TOP status, and then the deferred, the milestone payment will also start to kick in, and then your monthly mortgage will also start to kick in. And that will also be the point of time when your other neighbors are also starting to sell, and you will naturally have more competition. So I would say if you want to adopt the mindset of I want to sell at the 3rd year mark, the price might not be at its most optimum. And if you want to sell, say maybe at the 4th year mark, the price, while it has already increased by a little bit, but you'll naturally have more competition.
I think in my recent consult, I keep hearing this very recurring question. I think like maybe a lot of consumers have been seeing some content online or like, you know, like all these ads, right, that say that you have to keep churning your property every 3 years. Because like, okay, I buy now, 3 years later I sell, and then I buy another good one, so you can maximize the profit margin. So I think if I want to just debunk this myth a little bit is number one, whether only good projects will increase in value, not all projects. And good projects will continue to increase in value past that TOP stage or past that 3 year stage. So it's not something like, okay, you purchase already and then the price suddenly is stagnant all the way, or that it will start to go down. No. So if it's a good project, even if it's 10 years into the lease, 20 years into the lease, you can see that the price movement is still very, very healthy. And so it will mean that don't need to specifically need to sell at the 3 year mark. Why do we sell properties? Number one, unless if after selling this property, I can enter into a higher value property portfolio, then it will make sense for me to do the switch, because when I enter into a higher property portfolio value, even if I were to run the portfolio returns in the same percentage gain in the absolute amount, I will actually use the same 3 years to actually have more profit. Then that will make sense for us to switch. If today, after selling, I can only get back into the same property value, then it might not make a lot of sense to need to do so at the 3 year, because every time you switch, there is a cost involved, which is agency fee. And when you purchase again, there is buyer's stamp. All these small little things will eat into your overall portfolio returns. So that's number one. Unless I can switch into something that is of a higher value. Or number two, I determine that this product that I'm in actually really has no more potential already. So I'm selling a weak portfolio to go and buy a strong portfolio. So in an upward moving market, holding on to a good property and I cannot increase in value, there's no huge reason to need to switch every 3 years. But if you're in a flat market, so for example, when we are seeing in 2014 all the way until 2017, where the market was generally quite flat in terms of pricing, then it's very important that yes, you can maximize the exit value when it comes to TOP, switch to another one, because the pricing are not going to increase. We are basically maximizing out the returns of one project, and then we switch over to the next one. And of course, when it reaches the TOP stage, or like when after the TOPs, you usually will get more maximum value as compared to if you were to sell 1 year before like the TOP stage. So when should you be exactly selling will be more depending on your own property cycle. So if let's say, for example, I know that, okay, I'm holding on to a 2-bedroom, and I know that with my new financial ability, I'm able to get into like a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom very quickly, then it is okay that I do not maximize the price value of this property so that I do not waste the opportunity cost, and eventually I have to pay way higher to get my 3 and 4-bedroom later. So maybe I can make 50k more over here at my 2-bedder, but I end up paying 100k more. So I'm net 50k worse off.
Correct. So that will be what we call the expansion phase. If let's say today you're expansion phase and then you're currently holding on to the, say, a 3-bedder condo, and you purchase something that was like, say, maybe 3 years ago, and now you feel that, okay, during these 3 years, I've accumulated substantial amount of fundings, and then I want to be able to upgrade to a landed property. So that is what we call an expansion phase. So of course, when you say, you hit a certain price point and you want to quickly move to a landed property, you don't need to wait until, it reaches its, this optimum price, and you want to quickly leverage into entering into another different asset class that will have a delta in terms of the opportunity cost, then I think it makes sense. On the flip side, if let's say you're on a consolidation phase and then you're maybe, hitting towards your retirement plans, then I think it's okay to just hold on a little bit, because every dollars will then build into your retirement plan.
So if you're reducing the portfolio size, then you can delay this diversification for as long as possible. Okay, so let's come on to the last phase where we just talk about maybe like the three most...
last already
1.5 hours in already.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like quite fun Continue Today the father not around. We need to make full use of the time.
If you like this style of podcast, you can
please
comment in the section
below whether do you just want George and Yu Rong to just be doing the NOTG, but don't do it too often. It can be a bit tiring. Hey, kidding. Yeah.
Oh my god, this is so tough. 3 most anticipated upcoming launches in 2024. You say one, then I say one, and then we alternate.
Okay, can.
Okay, let's wrap up properly. If not, we will get fired.
Okay. You go down. Hey, go toilet.
We don't talk anymore.
I move away.
We don't talk anymore. We don't talk. What's the lyrics like? I forget.